Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by Jay Bowman. Today I'm looking again at one of my favourite synthesizers, which is the Mask1 by Kodamo. And what I want to do today is a bit of patch deconstruction. I'm going to look at a patch, I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to use it to describe some of what is unique and special about the Mask1 Bitmask engine. I'm also going to use it possibly to talk about some of the ways in which I think that engine could be improved further. So that's what this video is going to be about. It's not actually going to be about the patch which I was playing in the intro there. There's a different patch here which I've called J Magique for now. Quite an unusual sounding patch. And it has a different quality depending on where you play it on the keyboard. Because of where I've got the camera here, I'm focusing very tightly on the control panel for patching purposes, but if I play it at the top of the keyboard, it sounds one way. If I play it at the bottom of the keyboard, it has quite a different flavour. So let's have a look at this patch, describe what's going on, and hopefully that'll be a way of just talking about the Bitmask engine and what's going on here. So again, with the release of the Mask1EX last week, and the fact that that's sold out within such a quick time, hopefully that means a lot more people are going to get to know the Bitmask engine. And with the Bitmask engine comes this user interface. So let's talk about the interface and using it to deconstruct a patch. So one of the issues people say when they look at the Mask1 is there are no knobs. How do I make sounds? And it's true, there's only 2 encoders, so you don't, on the face of it, have the visual feedback that you do when you're looking at a knob per function synth or a fader per function synth. But the advantage is that this synth is never lying to you when you look at it, because if you're looking at a knob per function synth, obviously when you call up a patch, all of the knobs, well, you don't know if they're in the right position or not. The chances are that they are unlikely to be in the right position. So here, the synth is giving us some information. So we can see that LFO1 and LFO2 are both operative, and we can see the rate, and we can, if the rate was a bit slower, we'd be able to tell the kind of wave shape that each LFO is using. So that's some visual feedback we get. So looking at the patch, we can tell that those 2 LFOs are being used. Now, in order to see what's going on in terms of the oscillators and filter, we actually need to patch into those sections. So if I push the envelope button here and then push in the oscillator 1 section, I can see that the level of oscillator 1 is 63. So obviously oscillator 1 is playing and playing very loudly. 63 is the maximum value. Oscillator 2, the level is 20, so oscillator 2 is playing but more quietly. So then if we go through the envelope section, in fact before we do that, let's just check, see if noise is playing very quietly, level 1. So it's almost having no effect, so you can ignore that. And then we can see that there is some filter envelope going on as well. Let's focus on the oscillators for now. So if we patch through if we page through the envelope settings, we can see that oscillator 1 has a quick attack, because 0 would be the quickest, so 2 is still quite quick. We've got a kind of standard decay of 6, and then we've got full sustain, so the decay is not having any impact, and then a very quick release as well. So okay, so that's one part of the sound. And then oscillator 2, which I said is playing at a quieter level. Now that has a slower attack, a quicker decay, down to 0 sustain, and a bit of a longer release. So one of the things about the Mask 1, as I say constantly, is that each of these oscillators, the noise source and the filter, have their own envelope, and each of those will loop as well. So we have a lot of potential for crafting the sound just using these first 4 buttons. So we've got kind of 2 components to the sound here. We've got a kind of fluty quality, but then we've also got this, we've got a kind of bass tone, and then we've got a chirpy sound as well. So it's quite odd that we've got 2 oscillators and 3 tones there. So let's have a look a bit closer and see if we can work out what's going on. The secret is in the Bitmasks themselves. So looking at oscillator 1, the mask is 64. Now looking at the front panel, which I think you can just about see there on the camera, it lists some of the most significant bit masks. So we've got one for 63, which is kind of a sine wave with a period of silence, but we don't have 64. So I've got the oscilloscope here. Let's see if I turn down oscillator 2 to 0, and we'll just listen to oscillator 1. So this is the, turn it off completely, turn oscillator 2 off completely. So now we're just listening to oscillator 1. So this is the answer to how we get 3 tones out of 2 oscillators, because we have this one oscillator is giving us 2 sounds. Let's go down from the top of the keyboard. So it's weird. Okay, so there's kind of 2 qualities to the sound at once. Now, I've said in videos before that you have a very wide selection of pitch that you can use for each oscillator. So at the moment we're playing at -24. Let's change the pitch of this oscillator and see how that affects the sound. Okay, so if I raise the pitch up to 48, so that's 4 octaves. Well, it's actually 6 octaves higher than it's playing by default in the patch. We hear 2 things. One, we hear there's some aliasing. But we can also hear that when we play it at this volume, we're getting a more standard sound. Sorry, this pitch, we're getting more standard sound. So let's have a look at the oscilloscope, see what it looks like. And the filter's having an impact as well. So let's get rid of the filter for now, and just for the sake of this. So it's a kind of a square wave when you play it at the normal audible range, with a bit of a buzz to it. Very interesting. I'll turn off the effects as well because they are having an impact on the sound. So yeah, a buzzy square wave. But then of course, listen how it changes as we turn down the pitch. So what was the buzzy sound when it was played at a higher pitch is all of a sudden it's becoming the main pitch that our ears detect, but in a discontinuous way. So I think what we're looking at here is, you see how the sine wave for 63 is a sine wave with a period of silence. Then obviously this next Bitmask 64 is a similar thing. It's a similar wave with a period of silence. So that's why we're getting this discontinuous sound. And when you play the higher keys, you don't really hear the period of silence, you hear a buzz. But as you play it lower, you do hear a tone and a period of silence. So this is one of the interesting things about the Mask 1 and the wave shapes that it generates. I mean, people say there's nothing really unique about it. You could just have a sequence of waves in any synthesizer and use those to make patches with, which is I suppose is true, but there's something about the way that the bitmasks are laid out and the patterns they form and the particular waves which are chosen, which gives it a really interesting quality. So I'm just going to go back to the patch how it was before. So we can understand a bit more now that element of the sound, the kind of bass tone, which is coming from Oscillator 1, the chirpy tone as well, which is also coming from Oscillator 1. So one waveform is generating both of those timbres, both of those sounds. So yeah, again, that's one of the interesting things about the Mask 1. Now, what I will say is I always want to talk about the way that I think the Mask 1 could be improved. And I've said this a lot of times, and actually thinking about it, I don't know if there's something about the way that the Mask 1 bitmasks are generated that means that it has to operate this way. But each of the Bitmask oscillators seems to operate very much like a traditional analog waveform, i.e. it's free running, and there's a degree of pitch instability built into each of the oscillators. So when you're playing it at normal pitch, whatever that is, it gives the effect of a kind of virtual analog style of oscillator where there's beating when you're playing two oscillators together. They're never quite in tune, and there's kind of pitch fluctuations as well. Now when you play it, so I'm playing further down the keyboard here. And you can hear that when I press the key, because the oscillators are free running, I don't know if I'm going to be landing in a period of silence or in a period of tone. And so to get to the point, one of the things I would really be interested to know from Kodamo, if it's possible to do, is to have the oscillators, rather than be free running, to have them so that they start on the key trigger. Particularly because when you get these bitmask shapes down into the lower octaves, they transition from having a melodic form to having a rhythmic form, and there it would be really useful to be able to have them start at the same point in the rhythm each time you press the key. And the other thing is that for the same reason, it would be useful to have them be absolutely stable in pitch, if that's an option. I don't know if it's an option, but this is something I ask for. Every time I get deep into sound design on this thing, I think, oh, I wonder how it would sound if we could just fix the oscillators in that way. Okay, so that's oscillator 1. Oscillator 2 is more straightforward, so I'm going to turn down oscillator 1 so we can just hear oscillator 2. I'll turn off the effects because, as mentioned, those are having an impact. So oscillator 2 is Bitmask 31, which we can see from the front panel is sine wave. And the envelope is giving it a kind of flute quality. And I don't know if you hear, I don't know if this is going to come through on YouTube, but if you listen really carefully, there is a kind of vocal quality. It's the click, because these envelopes are very quick. I think it's the release, or maybe the decay is just. Or is it the filter? Let's see. No, it's the envelope of oscillator 2. There is a kind of click in, I don't know if it's in the attack phase or the release phase or where it's happening, but it's giving an interesting quality to the sound as well. So the main source of sound for this patch is the interaction of oscillators 1 and 2. So I think it'd be quite difficult on another synth to come up with a single layered patch that has that kind of combination of sounds. Here I'm just using 2 oscillators and no noise really. So that's part of the point, is that we've got separate envelopes for each of oscillator 1 and oscillator 2, which really helps get some interesting and complex tones from the Mask 1. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the original patch. There, if I hold the key, you can hear the bass more easily. So the filter is having an effect. So we've got cut off at 0, no, tiny bit of resonance, resonance 1. And we're in bandpass mode, bit of key tracking. So key tracking is at 35. If I turn it down to 0, you hear how the cutoff is lower when it's high up. If I turn it up to 100, you can hear how the cutoff is higher when it's when I play higher up the keyboard, and it's very muffled down at the bottom. So it's a really interesting feature, the key tracking on the filter for the Mask 1. It has a kind of, I found it more useful on this synth than on other synths which have had key tracking, and you really have to play with it to try and get the tone that you want from the filter. So on my core prologue, for example, there you can blend 2 patches. So you'll have patch A playing down in the left hand, and you'll have patch B playing in the right hand, and they kind of crossfade across the keyboard. So yeah, you can get similar kind of effects, but that's the interesting thing about the Mask 1, is I'm just using one layer, and it's having it's a very different sound depending on where I play the patch on the keyboard. So getting back to the filter, so it's a 12 dB per octave. So we've got 12 dB per octave bandpass filter with a bit of filter envelope. There, hopefully you can hear from that the impact that the filter envelope is having and the filter itself. And yeah, it's a multi-mode filter, so of course you've got notch, you've got bandpass, you've got high pass, you've got low pass. And they all sound excellent, and this patch just worked best with the bandpass. Okay, so as I said at the start, we can see that both LFOs are working. Let's have a look at what they're doing. LFO 1 is modulating the frequency of the flute sound, the Oscillator 2 sound. So it's very fast vibrato. So but also it's using the decay setting. So let's just turn down Oscillator 1. So it's quite a subtle effect, and yeah, I'm using the decay setting of the LFO, so that very fast vibrato will sound at the start of the note and then fade out, and also because the flute sound itself is fading out very quickly, it's not having a major effect. But it's nice that you've got those subtleties on the LFOs. You've got a delay feature to fade the LFO in, and you've got a decay feature to fade the LFO out. That's great. That's gives a lot of flexibility to the LFOs that you don't see on other synths. One thing I would say is that I would like those options to be longer, potentially, because you've got a value of 0 to 15, and 15 is not particularly long. And also, I think the times run consecutively for the delay and the decay setting. It would be nice if it was delay and then you had decay on top of that for obvious reasons. So that's what LFO 1 is doing. Let's look at LFO 2. So the amount is 15, speed 16, destination FX1 type. So at the moment, let's have a look at the FX. The balance for FX1 is 0. The type is ring mod 10. So the only way I can hear the effects is if I go into the mod section. What I've done is I've fixed the FX1 balance to the mod wheel at an amount of 15. So what that means is I can hear the FX1 as I turn the mod wheel up. So I've got control over that with the mod wheel. It's quite an interesting effect. That's the ring mod, and the ring mod itself is being modulated, and the LFO2 is modulating the type very quickly. So each of these types for the ring mod is a different speed of ring modulator. So if I just turn off LFO1, so that just lets you know what the Ring Mod 10 sounds like. Eight. And then I've turned the LFO back on, so it's modulating the type of the ring mod with a random wave at a very quick rate in audio rates. Okay, and then for FX2, I'm using delay 15. So that's one of the quite short delays. And I'm using it as a kind of a reverb almost. If I turn it up, you can hear the effect. And I've got it way down at 15, so a lot more subtle. Just gives it a bit of a body or atmosphere to the sound. Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. Just look at this patch. Very brief video. Hopefully it's been useful to show you the kind of way you can exploit these bit masks. As I say, you know, people will tell you you could just get the same effect by taking these waves and putting them in another synthesizer. Potentially you could, but I've got and played lots of synthesizers. I've never come across waveforms quite like the Bitmask waves. And probably, although I asked earlier in the start of the video, in the middle of the video, whether you could have the waveforms more stable in terms of pitch and to start with key trigger, that's one of the differences that gives the Mask 1 its unique quality, because if you just take these waveforms and put them in another synthesizer, I don't think you're going to have quite the same character. Now, is this a useful sound? I find it quite interesting, and sometimes the way I work with the Mask 1 is I have a melody in mind, then I try and get the sound to match the melody. At other times I just do some sound design and I get inspiration for melodies from and ostinatos, whatever, from the patches that I come up with. So this is a great synth for that, because it's both very quick but also very deep to generate new sounds. Anyway, that's enough of me rabbiting on. Hopefully this video has been useful for you. If you've enjoyed it, please give me a like and a subscribe. I'll catch you on the next video, and thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.